Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of News Dose, where I give you all of the latest news in the game industry. And if you're a fan of Capcom, we got a lot of new data on several different games. I must say Capcom has been very impressive this generation with Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, and you also have Monster Hunter, and the sales numbers really shows, so we're gonna discuss that. Also, Disney has had a few big games the last couple years. You had Spider-Man, which was developed by Insomniac Games, and you also had Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but now it sounds like Disney wants more developers to work on Disney-related games. That isn't all though, because we do have several other topics to talk about, including a couple new game announcements, Media Molecule's new game Dreams, Pokemon, and more, so stay tuned for all of that. To be honest, we have a lot to talk about today, but first, what's up with Nintendo, and why haven't we got a new Nintendo Direct lately? I think that has been on a lot of people's minds recently, to the point somebody figured out that it has actually been the longest drought between a Nintendo Direct ever. The last Nintendo Direct was September 4th, which was 162 days ago, and I think this has left fans kind of scratching their head, wondering when it will be. It seems like there is a new rumor every day on when the next one will be, and you see all of these fake accounts pop up on Twitter and other places just to make up some bogus date for when the next Nintendo Direct will happen. So anytime that you do see a new Direct pop up on your timeline, I would highly recommend to click on the profile and see how many followers it has before immediately believing it. Now there, for a while, it was also widely believed that a Nintendo Direct would be sometime in January, and it just never ended up happening. The thing is, Nintendo does have games that they could possibly show, and even Animal Crossing comes out next month, so you would think that they will at least have an Animal Crossing Direct. Maybe they'll just make a whole Nintendo Direct featuring Animal Crossing instead of making one solely to show Animal Crossing alone. There has been a lot of rumors as to what they could possibly show though. This includes a new classic-styled Paper Mario, a 2D Metroid game, as well as a Pikmin 3 remaster. Now, all three of these are just rumors for the time being, but Paper Mario and Metroid were leaked by credible insiders, so I'm hoping those two are at least true. Nonetheless, it has been a while since we got a Nintendo Direct, and because Animal Crossing is closing in, I still do believe that we will get a new Nintendo Direct before it releases. As to when that could be, I'm not really sure. I'm hoping sometime in February, but who knows, maybe they wait until March. What do you think though? When do you think the next Nintendo Direct will air, and what games do you think or hope that they will show? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of Nintendo, the Nintendo PlayStation has went up for auction, and yes, I did say Nintendo PlayStation. A little history lesson real quick if you didn't already know this, but once upon a time, Nintendo and PlayStation was set up to partner up to make a new console together. This was before PlayStation entered the game industry, but they were going to essentially release a Nintendo platform with CD-ROM capability, which is where PlayStation came in. And I mean, this partnership, from what I understand, was pretty much a done deal, to the point that Nintendo had consoles already made and was supposed to show it at some kind of event. Sony themselves was even expecting this to be shown at the event, but Nintendo apparently pulled out last minute and instead partnered up with Philips instead, if I'm remembering this correct. This was shocking at the time, and of course, the rest is history. Sony made the PlayStation, and here we are decades later with PlayStation being wildly successful to this very day. I mean, we can easily say how this was such a huge mistake by Nintendo, as they essentially helped Nintendo enter the game industry once they bailed on them, but hindsight is a gift. It is always fun to think about though that these long-time bitter rivals once did make a console together at one point in time, and some of those consoles do sit out there still today. They are incredibly rare though, and now we are seeing one go up for auction, so it's hard to tell exactly how much this thing is going to sell for. Last time I checked, I think it was at around $100,000 already, and we gotta remember, this deal is on auction for the next 3 weeks, so this is going to increase majorly, especially near the end of the auction, as things usually do go. I'm not really sure how much this thing is going to sell for, but I'm sure somebody is going to be spending a ton of money for this rare piece of history. I will keep an eye out for this one and let you know what its finalized price ends up being, but I would love to hear some of your guesses as to how much this coveted Nintendo PlayStation sells for. Let me know in the comments below. So as I mentioned earlier, Disney has had a lot of success in the last couple years in the game industry. Not only was Spider-Man huge in 2018 when it released for the PlayStation 4, selling 3.3 million copies in just 3 days, but they also had some success with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which performed better than expectations. I believe this one was between 6 and 8 million. Well, this seems to have Disney wanting to partner up with more developers across the industry to reimagine Disney franchises, and this can be very exciting. Disney owns a ton of IP. I know a lot of times people kind of relate Disney to Pixar, but they go way beyond just Pixar. I mean, they do own Marvel and Star Wars. We already saw huge success with Spider-Man, so I can easily imagine they will continue to do more Marvel-based games. I could see something like Captain America, Thor, or Daredevil show up in the game industry. I think all three could be phenomenal as well if you give it to the right developer. Personally, I would like to see Daredevil myself, as I am a big fan of the franchise, but like I said before, the question now is, who do you trust with these games? We saw Spider-Man and it didn't just sell well, but it was also a very high quality game, and that right now is the bar set. The thing is though, Disney left a lot of money sitting there. While yes, Spider-Man was very successful, I think it's a mistake making these games exclusive to only one platform. I think in the future they should try to get these games to be multi-platform and they will sell even more. That's just my opinion, but I don't think anybody should be excluded from playing these games. Either way, we'll have to wait and see what happens, but let me know what Disney franchises you would like to see come to gaming, and what developer do you think could do a good job? In other news, Capcom released huge numbers for several different franchises, and when I first saw some of them, I had to do a double take. As an example, they have reported that Resident Evil the franchise has sold 95 million units. That is just crazy ridiculous. I've always known that Resident Evil was a very big franchise, but I never realized that it had sold this much until today. So Resident Evil 7 has reached 7 million units, which is the third entry that has actually reached this number. The only two that sits above it is Resident Evil 5 at 7.6 million, and oddly enough, Resident Evil 6, which is at 7.4 million. I'm very shocked about that one, as Resident Evil 6 is arguably the worst in the entire franchise, or at least the mainline entries, but hey, it looks like a success financially at the very least. Now Resident Evil 2 Remake is also closing in on 6 million, so I would expect Resident Evil 3 Remake to push the franchise over 100 million units, which is a huge accomplishment. Now there is several other franchises here to go over as well, as Monster Hunter sits at 60 million as a franchise, and Monster Hunter World is at 14.9 million units sold. This is actually the best-selling Capcom game of all time, and it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down either. This is certainly not the first time we've talked about it on the channel. I mean, it was always a big-time seller in Japan, but Monster Hunter World really took off in the West this time around and really catapulted the franchise to new heights. Now the other two franchises we're going to look into is Street Fighter, which has sold 44 million, and 4.1 million for Street Fighter V, and that's really interesting, but I'll tell you why here in just a moment. Meanwhile, Devil May Cry 5 has become the best-selling installment in the franchise at 3.1 million units, and this puts the franchise at 21 million total. Like I said, this is huge numbers across the board, and it's also very well deserved. I think Capcom is arguably the best publisher of this entire generation. They have been pumping out excellent games left and right, and with Resident Evil 3 Remake around the corner, I think that's going to continue. Hopefully this continues next generation as well, and I'm just hoping for those Dino Crisis rumors to be true. You knew I was going to plug that game in here somewhere, but come on Capcom, let's make this thing happen. Now, as I said a moment ago, what's interesting about those Street Fighter V sales is that Namco Bandai also announced Tekken 7 sales numbers today. Street Fighter V was actually outsold by Tekken 7 with 5 million copies sold. Street Fighter is often viewed as the ultimate FGC game with a ton of participants every year at EVO, so to some it may actually be surprising that Tekken 7 outsold it. But I think if we look into it a little bit more closely, there is a reason as to why. See, Capcom made a deal with PlayStation earlier this generation to make it a console exclusive for the PlayStation 4. Meanwhile, Tekken 7 is on both Xbox and PlayStation 4 as well as PC, so being on all three platforms did equal better numbers here. PlayStation of course did help out with Street Fighter, but I do wonder if it was worth skipping out on Xbox and maybe getting a few more million copies sold. Nonetheless, both Tekken 7 and Street Fighter V seems to be in a healthy state, which is great for the fighting game community. I myself am a big fighting game fan, so this is always really good to hear. Moving on, Media Molecule's newest game, Dreams, is releasing tomorrow on February 14th, and reviews is starting to roll out. And the reviews looks amazing, just as I expected it to be. It currently sits at a 91 on Metacritic, though there isn't many reviews out as of this moment, so this could change quite a bit still. Nonetheless, I at least wanted to highlight this because I feel like this game has just so little buzz around it, and that shouldn't be the case for such a high quality game. I mean, I've barely seen anybody talk about this game at all, and I think most people don't even really know it exists. Even the name itself I hate saying, because if you ever notice when I talk about this game, I always say Media Molecule's Dreams. The name itself fits the game perfectly as you create different worlds and make your dreams come true, so I do understand the name, but it's such a generic name that when I search it up on any kind of search bar, it brings up a bunch of different content. Instead, I have to type Dreams Game, which is a clear sign that the name is not great. I digress though, the game looks excellent and I think it's a very impressive game. Dreams of course is made by Media Molecule, which is the developers behind Little Big Planet, one of my favorite 2D platformers, but this time around they went nuts on the creation tools. I mean, you can literally create pretty much anything that you want. The story, on the other hand, is only around 2 hours, but if you are a very creative person and you want to try to make your own game, definitely go check out Dreams. Also, do you remember those Pokemon leaks from last year leading up to Pokemon Sword and Shield? Well, Nintendo and the Pokemon game company wasn't too happy about it, and rightfully so. Well, after an investigation, they quickly found who was responsible, which was someone who had a review copy of Pokemon, and now Nintendo has publicly blacklisted the website responsible, which was F Nintendo. And now that I say F Nintendo out loud, it actually kind of sounds wrong. But, you know, anyways, because they have publicly blacklisted them, I'm pretty sure several other publishers and developers will do the same thing as they broke trust. F Nintendo did sever ties with the reviewer responsible, but the damage is certainly done. Nintendo wasn't playing around here, and by publicly blacklisting them, that will hurt that website pretty majorly in the long run, and hopefully it will keep things like this happening in the future. They were setting an example here. Now the last thing I want to talk about is a couple of game announcements. An independent game, Cloudpunk, has been officially announced for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. I'm really digging the art style here, and it's kind of giving me those Jak and Daxter 2 vibes with all of the flying cars. There is no release date just yet though. Also, Sakura Wars has been announced exclusively for the PlayStation 4 in the West and will be available April 28th. This is a very popular franchise over in Japan, but this will actually be the first time we have seen it in the West in 10 years. So great news over there for JRPG fans. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.